Okay, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight on our spring lecture series. We're excited to have Beth Grant with us. And I just want to go over a few things before we start. As some of you, I'm sure, are familiar, we have a chat feature and we have a Q&A feature for you to use tonight. The chat feature is for more, saying hello or making comments and things like that. And the Q&A will be, if you have questions for the speaker, put them in there. I will address them at the end of Beth's presentation. And this spring, our SIPs and slides lectures, which of course we're being very tongue-in-cheek with some of those things because it's COVID. We want to go ahead and start with the SIPs part because we hope you're all sitting at home on your couch or in your pajamas or whatever it is, had your dinner, enjoying a nice cocktail. So we're going to start with our version of a cocktail. And we're going to show you what our in-house bartender, Ephraim, did for us this afternoon. Audio problem there, folks. We're not sure what's going on, but regardless, Ephraim made us a lovely cocktail, and it was good. This is a little, you have to forgive our technical difficulties in the age of COVID and everything else, but it was fun. We were actually over in the bar at the Lapham Patterson house out in the backyard and having a good time. So anyways, I hope you all have a cocktail and you're settled in. I'm going to do a little introduction for Beth, and then she's going to share her screen and start the presentation. So again, our focus this month for our lectures in March is going to be, nature and the environment and that sort of stuff related to Thomas County, and then in a broader sense, Southwest Georgia, which is our lecture on March 30th. But tonight we have Beth Grant, who is with Friends of Lost Creek Forest. And Beth is a retired mental health counselor and educator. She's had a very active retirement as she's the leader of the 2008 Save Our Forest movement and Friends of Lost Creek Forest. So for over 10 years, she's led volunteer work at Wolf Creek Trout, that is always a hard one to say, Wolf Creek Trout Lily Preserve in Grady County. And she's also very involved with Birdsong Nature Center, the Tallahassee Magnolia chapter of the Florida Native Plant Society, Georgia Botanical Society, and Georgia Native Plant Society. She leads a lot of field trips and adventures out in those areas, and she's presented on the book Bringing Nature Home more than 50 times at Birdsong alone, and at libraries, garden clubs, and things like that. She's the lead volunteer at the Cherokee Pollinator Garden, which I know she's going to talk about at the end of her presentation, Cherokee Park Pollinator Garden, which, as you know, is here in Thomasville, and a public butterfly garden that features native plants. So we're going to learn a little bit of history of Lost Creek Forest and a little bit about plants and the environment and animals and all that good stuff. So without further ado, Beth, we're going to have you share your screen. I'm going to turn myself off, and you're going to unmute yourself if you can, Beth. And I'm going to have you go ahead and start.
Okay, can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Very good, thank you.
Okay. Lost Creek Forest is an old growth forest at the airport in Thomasville, and in 2008 they were getting ready to cut it down and make an industrial park, and we managed to convince them not to do that. So it's at the regional airport, and we have a website and a Facebook page, and I'll repeat this on the last slide. One thing that's special, of course, about an old growth forest is old trees. So this is one of the largest ones. These branches right here are as big as an average tree. And this is, it's not there. This is the same tree, just looking at the trunk. And notice this tree right here. I'm going to mention it on the next slide. Oh, my computer's being slow for some reason. There we go. And this is the same tree right here. And then that tree that you saw a minute ago is a very mature, large American olive, just like this is a very large, mature white oak. So that's really interesting. It shows you how, everything has its own expectations and life expectancy and everything. This is another of the trees that have real large species there, the swamp chestnut oak. And this is an American beech. And Lost Creek Forest is a beech, magnolia, spruce pine, slope forest, and wetlands. And that means that the canopy, the ceiling of the forest is made up of these trees, as well as a number of oaks and hickories. And then you have the other layers of the forest below that. This is a spruce pine, which most people are not familiar with, but there are a lot of them in my neighborhood, for instance. It requires moist soils and cannot be hit by a lot of fire without being killed. So it grows on slopes and predominantly hardwood forest. Whereas longleaf, which we are more familiar with, require dry, sandy soil in the uplands, and it's part of a fire-dependent ecosystem. So basically, on the tops of the slopes, you have the longleaf pine ecosystem, like you see so much in between here and Tallahassee. And on the slopes, you have the this type of ecosystem. So we have magnificent remnants of both here in Thomas County, Greenwood Plantation and the Wade Tract of the longleaf, and Lost Creek of the hardwood slope forest. You may wonder, what is the Red Hills? We hear that all the time. Well, it's the watersheds of the Ochlockonee and the Ocilla rivers. So it includes all the land that drains into the Ochlockonee and all the land that drains into the Ocilla. And the airport is about where the V is, right there. This is the Cody Scarp right here, and this down here was a more recent ocean, underneath the ocean. And then, so that's a sharp drop off. And then the whole coastal plain up to Macon was under the ocean a long time before that. This shows the airport right here. And this is just another more detailed map of the Ochlockonee. And this is its watershed, the light blue, and the Ocilla. And this is its watershed, the light blue. And of course, they come in on the other side of the creeks too. The beige are all our plantations, and this is why we have such magnificent habitat all around us in Thomasville. Mostly above Thomasville is farming, but around and below Thomasville is plantations, and therefore we have wonderful fresh water and fresh air. And I think most people aren't aware of that, and kind of take it for granted. Yeah, I already said those things. Okay, this is a close-up of the forest. This is the airport runway, and that also. And then this is Lost Creek. It starts over here and comes across here, and then goes over into the Ocilla. This is Yamacraw Creek, and it starts over here on the other side of the golf course, and then goes through the golf course and joins Lost Creek. So they're both tributaries of the Ocilla. These are some of our trails. This is an area that was clear cut in the war, and it was an artillery range, and there was an anti-aircraft gun right there. And these were also cleared in the war. And later they were planted in corn. And then about 25 years ago, they were planted in pines. And they've recently done a real good burn on them, because any kind of pine plantation needs to be burned in this area. This is Pavo Road, the golf course Pavo Road. And this is Airport Road. Airport Road goes all the way around here and over here. Okay, this is an interesting history. I'm sort of starting further back, and but I just found this really fascinating myself. In 1828, the Yamacraws were developed as a new band, separated from the Lower Creek Confederacy and the Yamasee after the Yamasee War, which was fought by the Yamasee and the Lower Creek against the British, because the British were demanding Indians be turned over for slaves, and they also were reportedly cheating the natives in trade. But the British won, and after the defeat, the Yamacraw still wanted diplomatic relations with the British, and the Creek and the Yamasee didn't. And the Yamasee allied with the Spanish and moved south, and the Creek just sort of went off on their own. And so the Yamacraw started their own band and lived in the Savannah area. In 1733, their chief, Tomochichi, gave Oglethorpe Yamacraw bluffs overlooking the Savannah River for the city of Savannah. And they became really good friends. In fact, some sources I found said that they were both the founders of Georgia. Oglethorpe had decided that he wanted to have a cooperative relationship with Native Americans rather than, have wars and conflicts. And they really cooperated a lot on trade and where to put the roads and travel and diplomacy with various tribes. Tomochichi and his followers would go with Oglethorpe and his followers all around Georgia, introducing them to the various native groups. In 1734, Maiko is the Indian name for chief. Maiko Tomochichi, at age 84, and 88 other Yamacraw traveled to England with Oglethorpe. He died in 1737. Whoops, I just dropped my thing. Oh, excuse me. Oh, it fell way under the table. Oh, there it is. The battery fell out. I'm sorry. There's another battery way under the table. Oh dear. Okay, I'll try not to do that again. They actually went to England with Oglethorpe, and but then he died in 1737, and his nephew became the Miko, but he died in 1743 at a very young age, and then they broke up. So the band only existed from 28 to 43, but sometime after Oglethorpe came and before 43, some of the Yamacraw settled in the area near Hurd's Pond, which is very close to the airport and the Lost Creek Forest. And one source said that it was after they had come here with Oglethorpe, and Oglethorpe granted them that land. I don't know why Oglethorpe owned it, but the British did. Anyway, there was a Yamacraw train crossing that's well documented near Hurd's Pond, and it still remained into the 20th century. Native American artifacts have been found all over the area, including along Lost Creek. And in 2008, we named Yamacraw Creek in their honor. Didn't have a name. This is just a map of where Oglethorpe landed up in Charlestown and then came to Port Royal and left his big ship there and came in a little ship and met Tomochichi, and they agreed for him to give the land to Oglethorpe, and he went back, and then he brought his people back just a few days later. This is Tomochichi, and this is his nephew, and this is Oglethorpe. And this seemed to be the most authentic picture of what the natives probably looked like. Some of the pictures had them in Western headdresses and all kinds of stuff like that, which I knew were not legitimate. And that this was, this part of it, the picture was put a number of times in as a picture of Tomochichi, so I think it's pretty legitimate. But I show it mainly to show you what the folks would have looked like that settled near Hurd's Pond. This is a historical marker in Savannah. It says the colonists sailed in the ship Anne from Gravesend, England, 1732, landed at Charlestown. 1733, proceeded to Beaufort, South Carolina, which is Port Royal, and thence in small boats through the inland waterway to Yamacraw Bluff. The town site had already been selected by Oglethorpe in friendly negotiation with Tomochichi, Miko of the Yamacraws, and with Mary Musgrave, whose father was English and mother was Creek. So she did all the translating and was a prominent tradeswoman. After that, we don't really know from the 1700s to the 1900s, but apparently by the early 1900s, the land of the airport and therefore the forest were owned by several plantations. In 1941, the city and county purchased land to build an airport. And then in 42, they increased it to make a total of 1,055 acres. And that last 155 acres, I did find documentation, was bought from Miss Whitney from Greenwood, who also owned Heard's Pond until very recently. In January of 42, it was the whole airport property was turned over to the War Department to build the Thomasville Army Air Base for use as a military reservation, an air base for training fighter pilots, and also for receiving patients for Finney General Hospital, which later became Southwestern and Southwestern Regional hospitals. And so the people would come off of the European theater and be sent to Finney General for recuperation from their war wounds. Small sections of the forest were used as for artillery training. And like I said, there was an anti-aircraft tower, roads, where they practiced night driving and that sort of thing. But most of the forest was undisturbed. And 45, the air base was closed. It's just amazing to me how much they did in that short period of time. The area joining the forest near the current golf course after 45 was had barracks and a mess hall, and it was used for the first technical college here and also for housing. In 58, all the land was returned to the city and county from the federal government. In March of 61, Thomasville Municipal Airport, which is now Thomasville Regional Airport, was open. And there had been a former Thomasville Airport near Campbell Street, south of the railroad station. It had grass runways. It was also known as Bose Field and Rose City Airport. In the 1980s and the 90s, there were archery clubs in the forest. At some point, it was considered as a location for a retirement community, but this was opposed by many citizens, just as it would be when it was considered for industrial park, and it was denied. So this is a 43 map of the Army Air Base, and this is buildings that they brought in from someplace else, and then these are buildings that they built. So these were barracks, and the mess hall was in here. The officers club was here, et cetera, et cetera. But you can see that the forest, this is Pavo Road, and this is Airport Road. And you can see that the forest from the air looks exactly like it does now, except for this was a little bit cleared. This is Airport Road this way. And this is all grown up in forest now too, but there's still some of the ruins of the mess hall and such. That's the artillery range during the war. This is what we were left with from the archery clubs, and there were probably 40 or more of these around in the forest. Fortunately, the city came in and moved the 10 or 15 that were close to the road, as well as the shower and toilet that were powered by barrels of water up in a tree. And we thought, well, they're ugly. The ones that were left in the forest were ugly, but you know, maybe we'll deal with them someday. And then several years ago, I was walking there in January, and I found one of these piles, and it was completely bare all the way around it, just bare earth. And I was over here, and I came over here, and there was a 10-point buck that had gotten its antlers stuck in this fiber stuff and had gone round and round and round trying to get loose until it starved to death. Hadn't been that long because it wasn't rotten yet or anything. So anyway, we started taking them out, but it's a big job, and we haven't gotten all that many out. In 2005, when they had the meetings on the county plan. I was there, and the forest was pointed out by Rick Bracey as deserving conservation. And in 2008, there was an article in the paper in January that land at the airport was being surveyed for possible industrial park. And then at the time, I was overwhelmed with work and other issues, and it startled me, but I didn't do anything about it. But then on Friday, May the 9th, there was another article in the paper that the very next Monday, the city council was going to vote on selling land at the airport to the Payroll Development Authority for an industrial park. And when I got off work from the school system at 3, I went straight to the engineering office and found out it was the forest, the land that they were considering, and started calling people. And they started calling people, and a bunch of us called our city council members. And on Monday, May 12th, we went to the workshop, which is the meeting they have before the city council meeting itself. Charles Conklin, Rick Bracey, and I presented a letter requesting that they delay the vote so that we could, do some research and see if this really was a special old growth forest like we thought it was. And then in the meeting, there were about 30 people there to oppose the sale, including a lot of the landowners on the Osceola River that didn't want industrial park on the headwaters to the Osceola. The council voted anyway, 3-2 to sell it, and they were required to have a reading later, but they never had it because of the subsequent activities. On Thursday, May 15th, that Thursday, Rick and Charles spoke at the county commission, and some of the county commissioners were also spoke of the reasons why that would not be a good place for an industrial park. And the very next Monday after that city council meeting, fortunately, I already knew a lot of environmentalists and biologists in the area, and got Dr. Gil Nelson and Wilson Baker to do a survey. And I wrote it up, and the newspaper was very supportive and printed almost a whole page article about that. And that started our Save Our Forest movement, where we had organizational meetings. We put out publicity all over town with flyers and in the newspaper and on TV. This is a map of the planned industrial park. And this is what I call the heart of the forest. Lost Creek is up here. This is Yamacraw Creek. And so all of these in the heart of the forest are lots for industries. And so that was very distressing for those of us who were familiar with the forest. And one of our biologists said that the Yamacraw Creek would have just turned into a ditch without the support of the forest around it. This is Wilson Baker. He's a well-renowned field biologist from the area. He knows all the land, and he knows all the people that own all the land, and he's a great guy. This is American Beech, Beech Magnolia Spruce Pine Forest, one of the canopy trees. And this is Dr. Gil Nelson, and he has, I don't know, at least 20 books on all kinds of things about plants mostly. And he's co-authored Audubon books. And then the last several years, he's been responsible for getting the herbariums online, which is a massive project. And this is what turned out to be the most significant plant in the forest, interestingly enough. It's Smilex Pumala, or sarsaparilla vine, which is a ground cover. And it does not have thorns like some of the other Smilex. It doesn't climb like all the other Smilex. But it indicates that the forest was never significantly disturbed because there's so much of it everywhere in the forest, and it would not be there at all if the forest had ever been cut. And all the places I've seen this anywhere else have been just like a little patch here and a little patch there, like at Birdsong, there's a little patch, and other places, but in this forest, it's everywhere. This is one of our posters. We put this poster up for a while, and then we did this one and added to it a public information meeting that we had on June the 12th. And there were about 70 people who came. We showed videos, slides, talks on the forest, gave talks on the forest, and talked about why it was not a good place for an industrial park, not only because it's a slope forest with moist soils and covered in massive trees, but also it was only on a 2-lane road, and didn't have the appropriate support. We made up packets to all the county commissioners who were to vote on it soon. And we had a copy of the video and copy of the survey of the forest and several other things like other newspaper articles and that kind of thing. We gave a short talk at the Rotary Club. And then the county commission meeting was on June the 23rd. So we'd only, had, I think it was 5 weeks from the city meeting to this one. 170 people showed up to oppose the sale. Many of our group and other community members and Tall Timbers representatives spoke against selling it. Twitty Titus jumped up at the end of our 15-minute time slot and said that her dad, Theo Titus, who had been our representative, state representative for some years, spoke for him, and he said, "Don't do it." Nobody spoke for the selling of it, and then they voted unanimously not to sell it. And so that ended it, and that's why the city didn't have another vote, because both of them had to agree, the city and the county. And we were tasked by the county to continue research and activities at the forest. In 2009, we went back and gave presentations to the city and the county on what we'd been doing and research findings, and how it helps meet the comp plan. In 2011, we incorporated, and this is our mission. The mission of Friends of Lost Creek Forest is to support, promote, and further the protection and resource conservation of the public land known as Lost Creek Forest in Thomas County, Georgia. Scientific and historical study of its natural and cultural resources, and public environmental education and stewardship. Here's some of the parts of the comprehensive plans that, as you read them, you'll see how much the forest helps meet these goals. Preserve and protect open space, unique natural areas, wetlands, water and woodland resources, scenic views, and areas of natural beauty in order to maintain a sense of rural character, provide passive recreational opportunities, and preserve environmental quality. And develop a system of recreational facilities and parks throughout the county that may be part of or separate from active recreational facilities. And a forest like this is a passive recreation. You just go there and observe and walk and that kind of thing. You don't build a bunch of stuff. This is a topo map, and I'm showing it to show you that this is the airport, and this is where Lost Creek starts in a seepage bog, which I'll talk about more in a minute. And it comes here and it goes, the airport has been, the runway has been extended, but it comes across here and joins Lost Creek, and Lost Creek comes along here and joins the Osceola, which doesn't show on most maps. And of course, there was a book written on finding the Osceola, but it shows on this topo map, which I think came from the 20s, that it comes way up here, way above Hurd's Pond and almost to whatever that little town is that's up here. And then the Osceola River goes down and goes under the ground and comes back up again until it hits the ocean. It's a very interesting river and pretty well protected in both Georgia and Florida. This is a brochure that we made. Not letting me change. There we go. This is the map that goes with the brochure. And again, it shows Yamacraw Creek coming from the golf course and coming up here. And I'm getting ready to show you pictures of these, of the wetlands. So I'm going to show you pictures of Lost Creek. I'll show you pictures of Yamacraw Creek. This wetland right here, which is called a basin swamp. And this wetland right here, it's a seepage bog or a fern seep. And these are our trails, and we've got another trail now that goes about like that also. This is our meeting area. So this is Lost Creek, and again, it's part of the headwaters of the Osceola River, one of the bigger creeks that are in the headwaters. Well, actually the biggest besides the Osceola River itself, or some places it's called Osceola Creek. You always have a lot of natural fallen timber in a forest like this. This is still Lost Creek. It's fairly wide. I don't know if you can tell, probably about 10 feet wide, and it's about 4 or 5 feet deep in normal times. And this is the wetland that's right next to it. Well, it's just a small part of the wetland that's right next to it. And this is a royal fern, which is our biggest fern. It's really big. I'll show you in a minute. This is that royal fern also, and this is a terrible picture, but anyway, it's the only one I had of the azaleas blooming. There's wild azaleas there in that wetland and elsewhere. This is that royal fern. That's Bob Dykstra House. And that's all down in that little wetland right next to Lost Creek. The floodplains, where the river goes when it really floods, has a lot of palm meadows, and this is there are blue stem and sawtooth palmettos. And this is the fern seep, or the seepage bog. And what this represents is that the water table is actually higher than the land at this point. The slope has come down here, and right at the top of this bog, the water seeps out, and so it keeps us wet all the time, and it makes a tiny little creek over here. But that's where all these creeks start, and most of the creeks in our part of the world start from a seepage bog, and lots of little tiny creeks coming together. Also in this fern seep is Jack in the Pulpit, which I just think is a really cool plant. And the biggest ones I've ever seen are here. Some years they've been as high as my waist, which is exceptionally large. And that's the flower. This is Jack, and that's the pulpit. And that's what a pulpit looks like in a cold cathedral. That's the fruit. Now, this is Yamacraw Creek, and it's much, much smaller. It's only about 4 or 5 feet across, and usually, unless it's just been raining, it's only a few inches deep. Our creeks in hardwood forests here are called black water streams, and that's because they're full of tannic acid, which comes from all the leaves that feed the creek, and the water, that runs down the hill going into the creek. Lots of lines, lots and lots and lots of lines. And then back to trees, and looking up at the canopy. Sorry, my computer's being so slow to forward the slides. Fall colors. It's really, we have a lot of fall colors, although most people up north don't realize that, I don't think. This pretty coral color are sourwoods, which is, I think, our prettiest fall trees. Hickories close second. That's a gigantic sourwood, biggest one I've ever seen anywhere. That's another beach. I keep getting all my friends and relatives in these pictures, and myself. All beech trees have lots of lichen on them, and this one has a heart-shaped on it. And this is another kind of lichen, which is called bubblegum lichen or Christmas lichen because of its red. So this is what we've done from 2008 to the present. In the category of research and education, Central High School's AP Environmental Science class has come out numerous times over the last several years until Laura Carnegie retired. And they did extensive programs that one of our board members developed, Will Sheftel. And they were studying water quality, microinvertebrates, soils, canopy, planted ponds, fire ecology, tree age, and invasive plants. And that's how we know that the pine trees are 25 years old, because we did cores and counted the rings, and that's how old they are. Thomas University has also, has done the most research of anybody. The environmental education classes and other biology classes have been going out there for years were going out there for years with Woody Search, many years before we even got involved. And the first herbarium ever in Thomasville has been started in recent years by Elizabeth Harrell. And a herbarium is a place where you keep samples of plants pressed in special cabinets. And that's what I was saying, that Wilson's putting all those online now. TU has done global information system mapping and brochures for us. That was begun by Dr. Christine Ambrose, and now she has retired, and Elizabeth is continuing that. And Elizabeth has also done quite a bit of research on the Florida milk vine, which I didn't put a picture of in here. That's funny. Anyway, that's an endangered plant that we have been documented to have the largest population of in Georgia and possibly anywhere. It only exists in South Georgia and Florida. The technical college, land, forest, and wildlife management, has been involved with us for a long time. And all their recent teachers have been on our board, as is Elizabeth, and as was Woody and Christine. They've gone out many times doing all kinds of studies, and they study, do night cameras of animals, and just all kinds of bring classes out for all kinds of things. And the Tallahassee Magnolia School, we've done slideshows and field trips for them. Valdosta State University has come many years with their dendrology classes, which is the study of trees. ABAC and Tifton has been there. University of Georgia classes have been there. Boy Scouts, Frontier Girls, and the Resource Center. Then, and this is the, they call it APES, AP Environmental Science class. Their science fair presentation, and they came to one of our board meetings and presented it to us, and the subject was the impact of watersheds on water quality. They've won those classes have won quite a bit of quite a few prizes on their science fair presentations on the forest, and one young woman even went to national and then international with her research there. Then we do all kinds of recreation mixed with education programs for the public. General walks. We have family fun days annually on a cold day, so that we can have a fire pit and roast marshmallows and hot dogs. And we have children's activities and music, and then we go on walks, and the kids have forest activities. We've had a number of mushroom walks. Those are very popular. Herps, which is like salamanders and things like that. Tree ID, ecosystems. We've had walks in association with the Fly-In and the Rose Show. Another of our most popular programs has been Primitive Skills, which is about Native American tools made with forest resources. Ethnobotany, which is the edibles in a forest, and tools a little bit. We've had poetry workshops, workshops on the Florida milk vine, costume contest at Halloween, and I do Thanksgiving and New Year hikes every year. And then we also have a lot of groups involved with us, especially the Florida Native Plant Society and the Georgia Botanical Society. Both of them have had several times people from all over the state of Florida and Georgia coming to see the forest. And then the Tallahassee Magnolia chapter has come for field trips a number of times. I also do an annual walk during the trout lily bloom. Start in the forest in the morning, and then we go to Greenwood, and then we go to Wolf Creek Trout Lily Preserve. And they've come on a bunch of field trips for many years. And the pilgrimages, their annual program in different parts of the state. And when it was in both Bainbridge and Valdosta in various years, they had field trips to the forest. Audubon Society from Tallahassee comes. Those are bird watchers. Hike It Babies, I'll show you a picture of. Learning in Retirement from VSU. Red Hills Awareness Group that doesn't meet anymore, and the Southwest Georgia Conservancy out of Moultrie have all had field trips. And these are just some of the ones I thought of off the top of my head. There's been a lot more. In 2018, our group was chosen hands-on heroes for the city, and we got to lead the parade, the roadshow parade. That was fun. And so these are some of our board members and Butterfly Garden volunteers and their kids. And this is Rick Barnes, and he was the individual hands-on hero that year. So we were recognized real well that year because he volunteered not only for the forest but for Keep Thomas County Beautiful and a lot of other things. We have volunteers on occasion every year with Hands on Thomas County. The Boy Scouts have come out to remove old trash. The technical college program does trail maintenance, including moving big fallen trees off the trails. And we don't have any invasives to speak of at all in the heart of the forest, but in the north section where there used to be some houses and stuff, they've done some invasive removals. And so this is Hands on Thomas County groups at the forest, and this is at the Butterfly Garden. And the forest is also featured in the book, The Natural Communities of Georgia. Kay Kirkland, one of the authors, came to the forest and wrote up a piece about it. And these are our board members. I'm the founder and the president, and I'm a naturalist and a retired mental health counselor and educator. Charles is the only other charter board member still left, and he's an organic beef farmer and a naturalist. And then everybody else are professional or retired professional biologists. Will Sheftal has a master's in botany, and he was the extension agent for many years at the Florida office, which is from the University of Florida. And this is Elizabeth Harrell, who has 2 masters in biology and is an instructor at Thomas University and the Herbarium director. This is Dr. Jeremy Green, who's now the teacher at the technical college program. And this is Aubrey Plymel, and she was a 2019 graduate of the technical college program. And then she is the first student to go to the new plan where students can get their AA in this program, and then they can go to TU in this program and get their bachelor's. And she's the first student, and she just started this school year. This is Reverend Will Brown. He is a master naturalist and a consultant for marine fisheries conservation and an Episcopal priest at All Saints, and he's our second Episcopal priest to have on our board. And this is Janelle Cleveland, and she has a lot of experience leading walks and all kinds of things like that. And she is right now starting a chapter of Audubon for the Red Hills area. And the first meeting actually is going to be next Saturday at Birdsong Nature Center. And Shelley Nichols lives real close to the forest, and she has experience in water quality monitoring and environmental education, but she's homeschooling her 2 adorable little kids now. And then these are some of the groups that have come. This is my beloved Magnolia chapter of the Native Plant Society. That's Wilson again. This is Woody Search with one of his classes before he retired. He's an emeritus. This is Richard Carter from VSU with his dendrology class, and he let us invite the public that year too, so we've got some people from the public. This is Wet and Happy. We had such a good time that day. It was raining when we got there, and the leaders, who was this woman and this woman, said it's perfect that mushrooms would be coming up as we moved through the forest. And oh, we saw so many, it was so cool. And everybody was really, really happy, and we were soaked to the skin. But that's how people like me are. They love being out, whether they get wet or what. This was the most special mushroom that we found. These are tiny. These are about the size of my thumbnail, and they're very rare, and they're used in natural dyes. And the woman who was leading the walk and knows every mushroom and Latin name and common name and everything, was really, really excited to find that. She took some of them to her teacher who does the dyeing. And a mushroom is like the fruit of the mushroom. And so if you pick it, it's just like picking a fruit. You're not destroying the organism. That's a table with some of the mushrooms we found. So we do the walks and we collect the mushrooms and then we put them out on the table, and they classify them for us in the scientific classifications. This is a Luna moth caterpillar and a ladybug. This is me and my little neighbor girl. This is the primitive skills class, and it's Joe and Luke, his son Luke Burnham. And Joe has been doing this since he was a teenager, making all kinds of very authentic and very beautiful and very excellent Native American tools with natural materials. And he does a field trip where he shows these off, and then he lets people try them, and then we go walking, and he points out the plants that they came from. This is an article in the Tallahassee Democrat about one of his programs. And they were doing friction fire, showing us how to do friction fires in that one. We've had really good support all along from the Thomasville paper and the Tallahassee paper. This is a public walk. This is one of our family fun days, and everybody's gathered around the fire pit, roasting marshmallows or hot dogs. And this is the Hike It Baby. This was so fun. These young women do this several times a week, go hike in various places with their babies. And this little fella walked all the trails. I guess she picked him up just so he'd be like the others in the picture. But that was a lot of fun. And imagine growing up like that, being a little baby, being taken out hiking all the time. I just think it's awesome. This is the Learning and Retirement Group from Valdosta State. This is one of the Audubon field trips. Okay, and then I just quickly wanted to mention the butterfly garden, which is at Cherokee Lake, joining the Rose Garden, because we manage that too. I'm the lead volunteer for that also. And this is our state butterfly, the tiger swallowtail. This is the butterfly garden from the road. That's a bench that the city gave us, and they provide us with all the pine straw, which is a lot. And it's in the shape of a butterfly, so that's a wing, and that's a wing. And the rose garden's over here, and the lake's over here. And this is a aerial, actually a satellite picture of the garden, and you can see a wing and the bench. So that's the road. So that other picture was taken from this direction. And then that wing and that wing are, you know, covered a little bit by the trees. And those are the bodies of the butterfly. This is one of our butterfly festivals. That's my mother-in-law who died of COVID this year. We have 3 butterfly festivals, but the one with the most flowers blooming is in October, and that's when this one was. This is the giant swallowtail, which has the caterpillar that we call the bird poop caterpillar, and that's what was on that plant that we were looking at in the last slide. And that's an American lady. And that's a checkered skipper on frog fruit, which is a tiny, tiny little plant. It's a ground cover, and the flowers are, those flowers are really tiny. Gulf fritillaria is our most common butterfly, and it's on the swamp milkweed. That's the underside, and these are silver if you see them in the sun, the spots. It's really beautiful. And of course, we emphasize host plants, which is the plants that the caterpillars eat. And it's very specific. So for instance, this is the Gulf fritillaria butterflies, and they only can eat passion vines, and that's what they're doing. And the same for the zebra longwing, also can only eat passion vines, and that's the flower on the passion vine. And this is a monarch on the pink swamp milkweed. Monarchs can only lay their eggs on milkweeds. And there are about 30 native milkweeds that nobody knows about to speak of in just in the Southeast. But this is the easiest to grow by far. And of course, there are lots of other pollinators. That's a carpenter bee. Okay, and then this is the last slide, and it has a lot of the information. But if you do a search, Cherokee Pollinator Garden, you'll find all this stuff anyway. Both of our websites are weebly.com websites, and the pollinator garden is called Cherokee Pollinator Garden. But the Rick, who was the hero in that other picture, made this Facebook page, and he called it Cherokee Lake Pollinator Garden. And he is a fabulous photographer. A lot of these pictures, well, probably all the ones in the butterfly garden are from him. And it's a beautiful, beautiful place to look at pictures of butterflies and plants. We have festivals in June, August, and October, and we keep those posted on the Facebook page. Lost Creek Forest is also weebly.com, and Friends of Lost Creek Forest. And there's an old Facebook page that just says the last posting was something like 2013 or something. So if you find that one, go to the other one. And I have scheduled for Sundays, March the 21st next Sunday, the 28th the next Sunday, and then April the 11th from 2 to 4 p.m. Walks in the forest. And I will leave them open to y'all first, and then we'll open them to the public. Because of the pandemic, we're going to limit them to 10, and we need you to pre-register so that we will only admit 10 people. And so mark those dates, and then either email me at this email, or Anne said that she could send me people if you want to chat about that or whatever it is on this program. That's my email address, and you can contact me for tours of the forest, tours of the pollinator garden, wanting to volunteer at the pollinator garden, and programs like this one on Lost Creek and Bringing Nature Home and Butterfly Garden and the Native Plants and Creek Trout Lily Preserve. And we always need volunteers, especially at the garden, and we're working on Saturdays at 9 now. But you need to get on my email list or come regularly, because we do cancel occasionally when we have something else, like last Saturday we had a plant sale. And we also could use 1 or 2 people for our board if anybody's interested, and we especially need a treasurer. All the people on our board are naturalists and biologists, and they don't everybody's scared of being the treasurer, although there's very little to it. So anyway, I'm done. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Beth. That was interesting. I definitely learned a few things, and I do have a few questions for you, if you don't mind answering them. Okay, so the first one is similar from me and people on the call and from all over, but can people go through Lost Creek Forest on their own, unguided, like at any time, or is it open and closed, or?
No, the county and the city did not want it open to the public, mostly for its own protection. They say that there are big problems with the parks that are passive parks that are open to the public, all kinds of destruction and trash and stuff like that. But also because it's on the airport property, there was concern about that. So it's only supposed to be through somebody on the board. That's an advantage to being on the board, is you get to take your own friends and everybody there. But we always call the airport when we go and everything. So, and we haven't been doing much at all during the pandemic, but those 3 trips that I just mentioned are kind of starting up again.
Okay, yeah, I know somebody who went on, I think maybe a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and they really enjoyed it. Of course, they happen to be a master gardener, so that would make sense, but they really enjoyed it, and if I get a Saturday off, I'll join you on one of those. I have another question too.
Sunday.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, well, those I do get off. Early on in your slides, you had a slide that was showing sort of, the Red Hills area and sort of down by Tallahassee, and you pointed out that the water, the historic water levels are obviously different from what they were. What would they have been? How far up would the water have come? Would it have been north of Tallahassee, all the way to the original coastline, if you will?
Well, a long time ago, the coastline came to Macon. And so all the coastal plains from Virginia to Texas, all of that was under the ocean. All of Florida was under the ocean at some point. And then at other points, there were islands and that kind of thing. But that line I showed you below Tallahassee was the more recent coastline. It's Tram Road basically, but it's just below Tallahassee, and so I don't know how many years ago it was, but that was a big coastline for a long time.
Okay.
But we're all talking about long time ago. but that's why we have longleaf pine, because, and why we have such soil. All of Georgia below Macon used to be under the ocean and sandy.
Okay. I have another question here for, I guess this, maybe you'll know how to answer this. It says, where was the Thomas County school bus garage in the late 40s and early 50s on the airport property? Do you know about that?
I don't know where the garage was. I had heard that there was housing, and I've been told it was, I read in the papers that it was private housing, but somebody else told me there was public housing there too, and that the school bus did pick the kids up and take them into town or wherever to school. And but I don't know where. I would suspect it was over there at the back of the golf course where the mess hall and all that was, but I don't know.
Gotcha.
For sure.
We've obviously got some people who have their own memories of the airport. And then somebody else wants to know, is your group or the group, or, you know, you're involved with a lot of groups, but are people looking for new areas to conserve in the county? Like adding additional land, or?
I received an email recently from a woman who's interested in seeing that there are more parks, and especially trails, you know, like bike and walking trails and stuff like that. But we're plenty full of responsibility, so we're not.
Yeah.
We're not.
Then you have to take care of the land, right? So that's the part.
Yeah, but certainly, if somebody wanted to do that with some area, I'd be glad to, you know, give them whatever ideas I have, and, you know, tell them more details of how we did it.
Okay.
There's a beautiful forest like this one, but it's getting totally eaten up with invasives at the park where Busy Bear used to be. There's 8 acres that the garden club owns, and it's just it has these, it's the same kind of forest and has big trees and everything. Only 8 acres though, but it is completely being overtaken by invasives, which need to be dealt with if it's going to be saved.
Yeah, I know that feeling. Okay. Somebody also asked, they said they missed hearing about how old are the trees that are documented? I mean, have they been dated?
That only the planted pines. We haven't wanted to, you know, do that to the old ones, and people just estimate life expectancy, you know, basically. So the biggest ones are probably 100 to 150 years old. Something
because
like
obviously
that.
there's some amount of destruction in doing the dating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Well, it would up in planted pine, you don't care so much because it's, you know, it's going to be harvested eventually anyway, but, you know, it might introduce disease or bugs or something like
Right.
that.
And I'm sorry, did you mention in the beginning, is Lost Creek a 501c3 that if people make donations to it, they would be tax deductible?
Right. Right.
Okay.
And we would very much appreciate that. We need to really modify our relationship with the city and county, hopefully this year. But all these years we've been paying the liability insurance for us and the city. And that we should have spoken up about that long ago. But anyway, yeah, we need money. We need money. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and we agreed to we're in some of our gardening activities, not related to this lecture, but in some of our gardening activities, you're going to get us some frog fruit, and we're going to make a donation to the Pollinator Garden. So that's a nice little reciprocal agreement there. But let's see. Okay, so I think those were all the questions. We had a great group tonight watching you. We have recorded this. So, you know, would be available for you, Beth, to use, or if anybody else on the call has any questions after the fact, we're happy to answer them. Of course, you're local, and a lot of our attendees are local, so we can always help them get in touch with you. But I know I was going to go visit Lost Creek one day when it wasn't sort of open, and I stopped myself because I realize now that there's probably you do need somebody to accompany you. So I'll have to do that with one of your walks. But we just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to all of our members who were on the call, who were on the webinar. Thank you to Amelia. She's behind the scenes running things. And I think everybody, we got our questions answered, and just been a great presentation. And again, to remind everybody, our next lecture webinar will be March 30th, and that'll be on climate change in the Southeast. And so along some similar thought lines. And let me just double check that there's no other questions. And if that's it, if you have anything else to add, we just want to thank you very much, Beth, for presenting with us this evening.
Let me add one more thing about the butterfly garden. We always have extra plants because a lot of the native plants spread and multiply. And we have plant sales whenever we have those festivals, and also volunteers are welcome to dig up and take extra plants. So if you want to get into butterfly gardening, that's a great source for plants.
Okay, people can do that on their own, or they should go through you, or?
Oh, and volunteers would dig them during a work time, and otherwise they would buy plants from us at our festivals.
Gotcha, gotcha.
And we use all that money just for, you know.
And do you have another plant sale lined up? Sorry, I had one more question.
June will be our next festival, and I didn't look up the dates. In June, it's the National Pollinator Day or something like that. In August, it's the Great Georgia Pollinator Count, and in October we just do our own because the garden is so fabulous in October. Early
Okay,
October.
and those take place at the Butterfly Garden or at Birdsong?
Yeah, at the Butterfly Garden.
At a Butterfly Garden, excellent. Yeah. Okay.
Birdsong plant sale was canceled this year. We had a small one at Metcalf, and also we're going to have a small one at Birdsong at the Saturday Rose Show event that is going to be at the Ritz Amphitheater. So that'll be native and non-native plants on that Saturday.
Good. Well, glad that you guys are still getting out there during these COVID times. I'm sure people will come and buy plants for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. We had a great crowd, great questions, and you did a great job. We really appreciate it.
I enjoyed it. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight.